The day it all began, the city was still asleep. A blanket of pre-dawn gray hung over the skyline. My alarm doesn't make a sound. It is a gentle vibration, a programmed sunrise that fills my bedroom with a soft, clean light. Order. Precision. These are the principles I live by. My apartment is spare, a landscape of white and gray and brushed steel. It is a quiet space for a quiet mind. My office at Argent Bank was the same. Before the sun crested the horizon, I would be there, seated before my 6 monitors. The only companions in my sanctuary were a single, stoic succulent I called Wittgenstein, and the ghost of Johann Sebastian Bach, whose fugues provided the perfect mathematical soundtrack for my work. My coffee was black, my focus was total. On the screens before me, the Aureus ledger was alive. To the uninitiated, it was just data. Trillions of transactions, a global river of wealth flowing through the bank's digital veins. To me, it was a living thing. I built it from the ground up, line by painstaking line of code. It wasn't just a ledger, it was a self-healing, quantum-resistant financial ecosystem. It had a rhythm, a digital heartbeat that only I could truly hear. He had no idea what he was really trying to steal from me. He thought it was a job, a title. What he didn't understand was that Aureus was my life's work. That morning I saw it. A flutter, a single packet of data infinitesimally out of sync. It was a picosecond lag in a transfer between Zurich and Tokyo. No one else would ever see it. No automated alert would ever flag it. But I felt it, like a conductor hearing a single violin string 1/100th of a tone flat. My fingers moved across the keyboard. A few elegant commands, a surgical correction. The flutter vanished. The rhythm of the system returned to perfect harmony. I took a slow sip of coffee. All was right in my world. Then, at 9 a.m., Damian Wells walked in. He was the new chief risk officer, a title he'd acquired the same way he acquired his suspiciously white teeth and his father's board seat, through inheritance. He was 32, dressed in a suit that cost more than my car, and radiated the kind of unearned confidence that only comes from never having been told no in your life. He strode into the quarterly strategy meeting like he was storming a beach. His suit was a shade of electric blue that hurt the eyes. His tie was a silk explosion of clashing colors. He smelled of expensive cologne and poor decisions. "All right, team," he began, clapping his hands together. The sound echoed in the sterile boardroom. "We need to actionize our deliverables. It's time to leverage our core competencies and pivot towards a more disruptive synergy." I watched as the bank's senior executives, men and women who had navigated global financial crises, nodded seriously. They were accustomed to the theater of corporate jargon. I, however, found it physically painful. It was like listening to a child who had learned big words but had no concept of their meaning. He pointed a manicured finger at the presentation screen, where a schematic of my Aureus system was displayed. "This is where we start." Nomi's little data project here. Little data project. The system that processed $7 trillion a day. The digital fortress that had never, not once in its 10-year existence, been breached. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach, but my face remained a placid mask. "It's solid," he continued magnanimously. "Good bones. But it's a legacy system. It's not agile. It's not sexy." He paced in front of the screen. "I've been in talks with a vendor for a new analytics suite. It's called FutureSight. Great brand optics. We can put the Aureus blockchain on their cloud platform to make it more dynamic." The room was silent. Putting the Aureus ledger, a closed proprietary system, on a third-party cloud was like taking the gold out of Fort Knox and storing it in a public locker. It was a fundamentally, catastrophically stupid idea. I cleared my throat. All eyes turned to me. "Damian," I said, my voice calm and even, "Aureus is not a blockchain. It's a block lattice structure, and its security is predicated on its closed architecture. Integrating an external suite, especially one with open APIs like FutureSight, would create significant security vulnerabilities." I laid out the technical reasons, clearly and concisely. I explained the cryptographic protocols, the isolation of the servers, the very principles that made Aureus the gold standard of the financial world. Damian listened with a tight, plastic smile. He waited until I was finished, then chuckled. Nomi, I appreciate the thoroughness, but that's old-school fear-mongering. We need to embrace agile paradigms. We can't be afraid to break things to move forward. The meeting ended. His proposal, thanks to his father's influence, was greenlit for a preliminary trial. The seed was planted. It was the first of many small personal humiliations. He forgot to invite me to follow-up meetings about the system I built. He presented my efficiency reports as his own findings. He treated me with the condescending air of a man trying to humor a difficult but ultimately irrelevant old relative. I endured it all with professional dignity. I documented everything, and I waited. The breach, when it came, was exactly as I had predicted. It was minor, originating from a vulnerability in the FutureSight API. No money was lost. No critical data was compromised. It was a digital scrape on the knee, but it was the opening Damian had been waiting for. He summoned me to the glass-walled conference room on the executive floor. It was 11 a.m. My entire team could see me walk in. They could see Damian standing there, arms crossed, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. He didn't offer me a seat. "Your little project has made us vulnerable," he said, his voice loud enough to carry. He gestured vaguely at the trading floor outside the glass. "The board agrees we need a more forward-facing risk posture. We're sunsetting your direct oversight." I stood still, my hands clasped behind my back. "The breach was external, Damian. It came through the FutureSight portal." "I have the logs." He waved a dismissive hand. "Details. The point is, your system was at the center of it. It's archaic, too rigid. We need to be fluid, dynamic." He took a step closer, his voice dropping into a tone of mock sympathy. It was the cruelest part of the performance. "We don't need watchmakers anymore, Nomi. We need rocket ships, and you're weighing us down." The word hung in the air between us. Watchmaker. He gestured to the 2 security guards who had appeared at the door. "They'll escort you out. Your personal effects will be couriered to you." My access was cut before I could even say goodbye to my team. As the guards led me to the elevator, I looked back. I saw my office, my sanctuary, and on my desk I saw Wittgenstein, my little succulent, abandoned under the fluorescent lights. I saw Damian watching me through the glass, a smug, triumphant smirk on his face. I kept my back straight. My expression was neutral. He would not see me break. He would see nothing at all. As the elevator doors closed, the sterile corporate hallway disappeared. For a moment, I was a child again. I was in my father's workshop. The air smelled of wood polish and old metal and oil. Sunlight streamed through the dusty window, illuminating the tiny, intricate universe of a grand complication timepiece spread across his workbench. My father, his hands steady and sure, picked up a minuscule gear with a pair of tweezers. "Every piece has a purpose, Nomi," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Even the smallest one. To understand the machine, you must know the soul of every part." He looked at me, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "The world is full of people who only see the hands moving. They never think about the heart that makes it tick." He recited a line from an old poem he loved, a line about the secret soul of the machine. The elevator reached the ground floor. The memory faded, but the feeling remained. Warmth, strength, clarity. Damian's insult hadn't been an insult at all. It was a prophecy. He saw a watchmaker. He had no idea he was looking at the architect of the clockwork that ran his entire universe. I had built this system with one hidden feature, a feature known only to me, a feature born in that dusty workshop years ago. I didn't go home and rage. I didn't call a lawyer. I went home to my quiet, orderly apartment. I opened my laptop. I pulled up my personal calendar. A recurring event was marked, 10 days from now. It was a private appointment I had set a decade ago when I first activated Aureus. It simply said, Audit Day. A slow, satisfied smile spread across my face. It was the first time I had smiled all day. I booked a one-way ticket to a remote cabin in the mountains, a place I knew had no cell service and no internet. I packed a small bag, A few books, warm clothes. I didn't need to hack anything. I didn't need to plant a virus or leak a document. My revenge wasn't an action. It was the deliberate, calculated absence of one. My weapon was the calendar. The next 10 days were, I imagine, a period of great triumph for Damian Wells. He sent out a company-wide memo announcing a new era of agile risk management. He took over my office. He probably threw Wittgenstein in the trash. He began integrating his ridiculous FutureSight software deeper into the bank's periphery systems, a child gleefully plugging his toys into a nuclear reactor. Meanwhile, deep in the digital heart of Argent Bank, a clock was ticking. The Aureus system's internal chronometer, a piece of code as immutable as the laws of physics, counted down the seconds to the mandatory quarterly Integrity Audit. It was a process I had designed to be the ultimate failsafe. It would re-encrypt the entire multi-trillion-dollar ledger, purging redundancies and strengthening its defenses. It could not be stopped, it could not be bypassed, and it required a key. A 256-character alphanumeric key, a key that was not stored on any server, a key that was not written in any document, a key that was generated by a mnemonic algorithm that existed in only one place in the entire world, my mind. It was an algorithm built from the memory of my father's workshop, the serial numbers of his tools, the date on the calendar, and the line from the poem about the soul of the machine. It was, quite literally, a piece of my soul. The 10th day arrived. I was miles from civilization, sitting in a comfortable chair by a roaring fire, reading a book. The snow fell softly outside, muffling the world in a blanket of white. It was peaceful. At Argent Bank, it was 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The countdown hit 0. In the cavernous, chilled control center, a single message appeared on the main screen. It was written in a simple, clean font. It pulsed with a soft, white light. Integrity Audit initiated. Awaiting Aureus key. At first, there was no panic, just confusion, an alert, a glitch. The technicians on duty ran their diagnostics. They found nothing wrong. The system was performing perfectly. It was simply waiting. As a consequence of waiting, all outgoing international transfers were frozen. Then, the automated clearinghouses began to fail. The river of money had stopped flowing. By day 11, the confusion had curdled into concern. Damian, I was later told, was furious. He assumed it was a simple glitch, a bug left behind by the old guard. He brought in a team of expensive outside consultants. They were the best in the business. They stared at the Aureus interface, mystified. The system was a black box, its core logic impenetrable. Every attempt they made to bypass the key request was met with a polite but firm digital refusal. The system had locked them out. It was protecting itself. The markets, sniffing uncertainty, began to get jittery. By day 12, the bank was paralyzed. Billions of dollars were inaccessible. The stock price was in freefall. The news channels were running frantic segments about the Argent Bank meltdown. Damian was no longer furious. He was terrified. He was a whirlwind of impotent rage, his expensive suit rumpled, his face pale with sweat. He screamed at his tech team. He screamed at the consultants. He was the captain of a ship that had stopped dead in the water, and he didn't even know how the engine worked. The system he had called archaic had brought him and the entire bank to their knees. That evening, a frantic search for me had culminated in them tracking my flight, hiring a local guide, and sending him up to my cabin on a snowmobile. He carried a satellite phone. "They said it's an emergency," the guide told me, his breath fogging in the cold air. I took the phone. I walked back inside and sat by the fire. I clicked it on. A video call connected. A gallery of faces appeared. The entire board of Argent Bank looking grim and terrified, and in a small window, Damian Wells. He looked like he had aged a decade in 2 days. "Know me," the chairman said, his voice strained. "Thank God we found you." "The system, it's locked down. There's some kind of key." I let the silence stretch. I took a slow sip of my tea. I could hear the crackle of the fire. On the screen, I could hear the distant cacophony of the control room, A symphony of panic. Damian's face appeared in the main window. "Know me," he stammered. There was a misunderstanding. I apologize." I looked at him. His swagger was gone. His smug confidence had been replaced by a raw, pleading fear. The look on his face when he realized that his entire world, his career, his family's reputation, was completely and utterly at my mercy. It was more satisfying than I could have ever imagined. I watched his world collapse in real time, and the only sound was the crackling of the fire. I let another long moment pass. Then I spoke. My voice was perfectly level, perfectly calm. "The key isn't a password, Damian. It's a proof of presence, a proof of knowledge." I leaned a little closer to the phone's camera. What he didn't understand was that Aureus isn't just a machine. It has a soul, and the system is designed to protect itself from people like you. The flight back was on a private jet. The board was waiting for me in the main boardroom. They didn't offer me coffee. They didn't engage in small talk. They just waited for me to speak. I didn't sit down. I stood at the head of the table in the chairman's spot. I didn't negotiate. I dictated my terms. First, Damian Wells was to be terminated for gross negligence, effective immediately. His severance would be canceled. His stock options would be voided. Second, I would be appointed to his former position of Chief Risk Officer. In addition, a new C-suite role, Chief Systems Architect, would be created for me. I would have ultimate authority over the bank's entire digital infrastructure. Third, I would be given a seat on the board. They agreed without a moment's hesitation. Their desperation was the sweetest form of validation. I walked from the boardroom to the control center. The technicians and executives who filled the room parted for me like the Red Sea. They looked at me with a mixture of awe and fear. I was no longer just Nomi, the quiet woman from Data Integrity. I was the only person on Earth who could restart the heart of the global financial system. I sat at the master console. The simple message was still on the screen. Awaiting Aureus key. I ignored the dozens of eyes on my back. I closed my own. For a moment, I was back in that dusty workshop. I saw my father's hands. I heard his voice. I felt the comforting weight of a tiny, perfect gear in my palm. My fingers flew across the keyboard. It was not a password. It was a symphony of characters, a poem written in code. The 256-character key flowed from my memory onto the screen. I hit enter. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the message on the screen vanished. In its place, the Aureus ledger bloomed into life. Data began to flow. The river was moving again. A collective sigh of relief, so loud it was almost a roar, filled the room. The heart was beating. Weeks later, I sat in my new office, Damian's old office. His garish, abstract art was gone. The electric blue walls had been repainted a calming, minimalist gray. On the wall behind my desk hung a single, large, framed schematic. It was a beautiful, intricate drawing of a tourbillon watch escapement. On the corner of my desk, next to my keyboard, sat Wittgenstein. One of my former team members had rescued him for me. He was looking healthy. I was now the Chief Risk Officer and Chief Systems Architect of Argent Bank. I had a seat on the board. I was one of the most powerful people in the company. My first official act, in my new capacity, was to initiate a full, invasive integrity audit of all of Damian Wells's personal and family accounts held by the bank. An audit he could not stop. An audit that froze every last one of his assets. He was not just fired. He was professionally and financially neutered by the very system he had so arrogantly scorned. I took a sip of my coffee. It was black. Outside my window, the city bustled with life, with commerce, with the ceaseless flow of data. I could feel the gentle, rhythmic hum of the Aureus ledger all around me, a perfect, orderly universe running exactly as its creator intended. The Watchmaker had won.